All right, everybody. Welcome to Liberty's Cage. I am Shane Jenkins, and I'm honored to have Stephen D'Achille, along with my friend Kim Coulter from Warboy Studios. We are going to get into some heavy topics, but I think it's a very pertinent and important topic, especially for today with the Lindsay Clancy trial and the death of her three children, and just the mental health aspect of all of that, and kind of feel like people falling through the cracks in regards to that. I'm still not very informed about the topic, but I brought Kim along because she is a new mother and has several children and has a good, angle from the women's point of view. I didn't want us to have Stephen and I to have a conversation and be like, all these ladies be like, well, why didn't you ask him this? And why didn't you ask him that? Well, I've never had a baby, so I didn't know what to ask. And I've never had postpartum depression. So I felt like this was an opportunity, and I usually don't go live, but I'm blessed to have my friends here. Blessed to meet Stephen. Our friend Mel has connected us, and I would like to kind of just ask you, Stephen, like if you want to kind of just go back and give us your backstory, if you want to just get into that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. 2013, my wife Alexis and I found out we were pregnant, having our first child, and really we had a perfect 9 months. It was a lot of celebrating. We had a baby shower. Her father lived in Florida. So we had one down there. Her mother was in Jersey. We had one there. My family's in Pittsburgh. We were living in Pittsburgh, and so we had a big baby shower there, and it was just this big celebratory. My triplet sister was pregnant at the same time with her, and we always wanted kids close in age so they could be cousins and best friends with their cousins the way I was with mine growing up, and it was just this really awesome, amazing time, and then we got to the delivery room, and there was a situation in the delivery room where it was a traumatic birth experience, and I always kind of say, like, I don't know that there's such a thing as a birth that is not traumatic.
Right.
Even the smoothest birth is still pretty traumatic. Or like if men went through what women went through, I don't think we'd ever recover. So there's that. But this was a truly traumatic birth, and it was our first child, and the doctor was a young OB, and she came in the room, and my wife's screaming. There's a nurse in me, and she's screaming, I gotta push, she's coming. I gotta push. And the doctor came into the room, and she just said, listen, you're third in line. Like, I have a high risk pregnancy in front of you, and I have multiples after that, or vice versa. And she said, you're a first time mom. Your baby's not coming for at least 2 more hours. And you can push now and not have energy 2 hours from now when you need it, or you can listen to what I say and have the energy. Doesn't matter to me. Turned around, walked out of the room. And
That's insane. That's insane.
crazy. And so 12 minutes later, here comes our daughter Adriana, and I'm holding one leg. There's a nurse holding the other leg. There's no doctor in the room, and we're both screaming, for somebody to come in. And they were screaming for a doctor, and what they were screaming for was for someone to come in with scissors to cut the umbilical cord,
Mm.
because her umbilical cord was wrapped multiple times around her neck, so she had no slack to come out. And so all of a sudden, it turned into what's called a code blue delivery, meaning that either the mother or baby's life is in jeopardy.
Oh no.
And in our situation, it was our daughter's. And so she came out, scary situation. We went from no doctors to like sirens and lights and doctors everywhere, and everyone was all over the baby. And I still remember like her first cry when they got her breathing, and it was like the biggest relief ever. And I remember looking at my wife, and it was like her eyes were glazed over, and she had this blank stare on her face. And I don't think she ever really recovered from that experience. And that was like the beginning of the end. And, the next 5.5 weeks were, I mean, to watch someone you loved unravel um, as quickly as she did. Each day just became worse than the previous one. And each day you're going, oh my goodness, how are we going to make it one more day? And then the next day's worse, and the next day's worse. And, so there's there's this generic term like postpartum depression, which, the conversation has to stop around that because so many women experience different emotions that aren't depression. And some women have OCD, some women have rage, some people have anxiety, some people,
Mm.
my wife kind of went through the whole gambit of perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, kind of experience everything. And then ultimately, in the end, in a psychosis that she didn't survive, unfortunately. And, so my wife's big thing was like, we finally got out of the hospital and she was struggling. And, you know, she was the biggest thing I think for women going through this is like you always hear when people talk about mental health, like, oh, they suffered in silence. And I believe that like it takes a lot of courage to muster up the bravery to put into words
Mm.
to loved ones and medical professionals that you're having thoughts of harming yourself or your baby. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do. It's easier to just hold it in,
Right. Yeah.
and then you hear these tragedies. Like everyone's like, "Oh my God, I had no idea." No one said it. I mean, my wife was vocal. She knew she was in trouble. She was desperate to get help. And so, in her kind of searching for help, we went to our first doctor's appointment. Um, and it was like with a LCSW, which I had no idea what any of these titles, and I didn't even know the difference between a psychiatrist or a psychologist at the time. You're just,
Mhm.
looking for anyone. But like this woman worked on behalf of the OB practice where we delivered, and we went back to the hospital where we delivered, and we met with her, and it was the first time, like no one had mentioned. It was a couple weeks after our daughter was born, where the lady was really concerned, really worried about my wife, and probably the most worried and the most compassionate care we got throughout the whole process.
Mhm.
And it was the first time my wife heard that she had been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder from the delivery. And I think anytime you hear like you have this diagnosis now, I mean it's shocking. And then you get prescribed all these meds where it's kind of like, okay, you're going to take these meds, especially with antidepressants and stuff, where it's like, oh, and by the way, like you have to take these medicines for every day for the rest of your life. And then you start to think, like, I'm really sick. I can't even live a normal life without medicine.
Mm.
And in my wife's case, the biggest thing that, in the beginning was she really believed that her first act of motherhood, like so many girls grow up wanting to be a mom, wanting to have babies one day. And that was always my wife's dream. And the very first thing she did as a mother, in her opinion, was she thought she gave our daughter brain damage because she didn't listen to the doctor, because she couldn't hold her in for 2 hours. And
Oh
of course,
man.
that's ridiculous to think about. Like, these doctors make a lot of money to deliver babies in a safe,
Right.
healthy manner in hospitals. And, you know, the doctor should be in the room whenever the baby decides to come.
Right.
But in our case, it was like short staffed or for whatever reason that there just was no doctor there. And it's kind of off topic, but it's like, it really bothers me, that as far as I know, that doctor got paid in full as if they were there to deliver. And I come from a restaurant background. Like if I screw something up, the customer doesn't pay, but there's really no ramifications for, she got paid like she did her job and did it well. And she wasn't even or in the room. And so anyways, so that was that started everything with my wife. And
Well, can I
she
ask
thought
you a
our daughter
question?
had brain damage
Can I ask you a
because she
question,
couldn't
Stephen?
learn it. Yeah, sure.
I just so, and if I understand this is kind of a detail that, but I was wondering. So when you guys went and got help, and they said, okay, you've been diagnosed with X, Y, and Z. Had she, and I don't know if you were painting with a broad brush that this is typically what women experience, but what exactly was your wife? She was saying that she was going to harm herself or harm the baby or both.
No,
Or,
they were mild symptoms. She had debilitating anxiety and she was depressed. And she was exhausted. She wasn't eating much. My wife was thin. She was, but she was in 5.5 weeks postpartum. She was below her pre-pregnancy weight, and she had lost 50 pounds, over 50 pounds in 5.5 weeks.
That's crazy.
And which, like, looking back, it's like, man, people need to know, like, you can learn a lot about someone by watching how they eat. And if you're not eating right, everything that goes into your body has an effect on your mental health.
Yeah.
And but really, at disappointment, it was the anxiety that, for anyone that's ever experienced debilitating, like, crippling anxiety, like, it would give me anxiety just watching her. And she would,
Mm. Oh, he cut out a little bit. He froze up. We might have dropped the stream. Oh no.
No.
Hopefully he comes back.
He's demonstrating what crippling anxiety looks like.
Right. Just black out, right. So while we're waiting to figure out what's going on with him, Kim, have you experienced any kind of postpartum issues, or if you want to get into that?
Well,
or...
I mean, I've had depression and anxiety disorders my whole life. I think ultimately a lot of that was a side effect of being adopted, but that was one thing I was very terrified about going into motherhood, was like, what if I have this? Like, because like I'm already prone to it, so what if I have this baby and I fall into a crazy depression? And thank the good Lord that's not what happened. But I would say that I also had like a somewhat traumatic birth experience. I had really incompetent is the word, incompetent medical staff. It was during the peak of COVID, so there was a lot of fear mongering about not wearing masks and all this other stuff. And I just remember, like, again, like, these people, they're crooks, and I knew this going into the situation, which I believe gave me an advantage, as to, like, I kind of already knew how I would handle the situation if they were to be like, well, you need to wear a mask, or your husband can't be in the room, or this, that, and the other thing. And I came armed to the teeth with all of the legalese that I had. I threatened putting this. I mean, I was publishing stuff for the National File, and I was going on InfoWars. I was like, if you don't think I'm going to Alex Jones, you're out of your mind.
Right, yeah.
And thankfully, so what did I'll give the shorter version of the story, but basically, I was in labor for 4 days. I was trying to do a natural birth. By the time 4 days had passed, I hadn't slept. I was exhausted. My body was naturally pushing, and I didn't feel like I could do it without pain assistance. So I finally conceded and asked my husband if he wouldn't mind if we moved to the medical facility, which was right next door. They were hand in hand. So it was like, if you couldn't do it at the birthing facility, you could do it at the hospital. Well, both of the nurses were like, oh, thank God, we'll get rid of you. Horrible sign. Anyway, there's a bunch of other stuff before that, but we're not going to get into that. I get into the hospital. I have the baby. The baby's healthy. I'm healthy. Everything's fine. Whatever. They didn't tell me they gave me fentanyl, but that's I put an asterisk in that. And they're telling me, I'm saying, okay, at the nursing, not the nursing facility, at the natural birth facility, they were my policy was that I was to leave within 4 hours of giving birth. And I was fine. Like I said, everything checked out. Everything was healthy. And they were like, well, now you're in the hospital, so you have to stay at least 24 hours. And I was like, that's not happening. There was a medical, this was are you familiar with the show Orange is the New Black?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Women's prison.
This is the hospital that they depict in that show was the hospital I gave birth at.
Oh, wow.
And one of their affiliates had just given a speech about how we needed to eradicate whiteness.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I just had a white baby in a hospital where their affiliates are talking about eradicating whiteness, and you're trying to make me stay here for 24 hours. No, I'm leaving. And they quoted a policy. They said, oh, well, there's a policy. And I said, okay, show me the policy. Oh, we can't show you the policy. I'm like, you know how illegal that is, right? You can't cite a policy about me not being able to leave. Threaten to call social services, CPS, on me if I leave with my child early, and then tell me you can't show me the policy. So I caught them in an intellectual loophole there, so they couldn't force me to stay. But when I went home, I would say postpartum, I've had 4 kids. You would mention, I've had a few kids. I just had my youngest is 9 weeks, maybe closer to 10 weeks at this point. Postpartum for me is anxiety and intrusive thoughts. Like, I will be walking up the stairs or something, and I'll like run through in my mind, like, oh my God, what if I slipped and fell and the baby got hurt?
Oh, wow.
Or even like, oh, the baby hasn't made noise in a long time. Let me run upstairs and make sure he's breathing.
Right.
like things that are not
But out of
necessarily
nowhere, that's not triggered by any, like, because like I got a bunch of bills or like stuff's
Yeah.
due, and like now I've got anxiety, and then I start to get like depressed because I feel like I'm never going to catch up. Those are things that, like, okay, this happened, so this happened. You're talking like just out of
the
nowhere.
middle of nowhere. It'll be
Right.
like, heaven forbid, like it's like you go through, your brain concocts all of these like insane scenarios that are probably never going to happen, but in your mind it's like it puts you in the place where you're actively thinking about it, you're actively trying to like work through it in your brain. And thankfully, like, I've developed, I mean, for better or for worse, I don't want to call it a disassociation. I'm able to like separate those thoughts, and I know what they are. I know how to identify them. I know how to say, okay, like, this is irrational. I feel anxious about it, but this is irrational, and just go about my day. Not everybody has those coping mechanisms. So like,
Right.
when you're constantly like, I think if I went to a clinical diagnosis and someone were to try, I'm not one of those people that likes to throw in diagnoses or anything, but like, I think they would probably tell me I have compounding PTSD. And the thing is, like I said, I've gone through so much CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and stuff from when I was a young kid. So like, I have a lot of the coping mechanisms and a lot of the foundation that just a lot of people don't necessarily grow up with. So like I said, when I have those like intrusive thoughts, or when I have the anxiety spikes, I know how to kind of compartmentalize that. And I mean, that I talk to other women about that all the time. It's one of the reasons I have an online presence, is because I feel like these are the kinds of topics that other women deserve to have access to hearing information about, from people that aren't just medical professionals, or people who are disconnected from it, people who have like actually lived through it. Really can like bring a lot of concrete experience that you would probably have more faith in than just going to get clinically diagnosed in a lot of cases.
Okay, thank
Welcome
you for
back.
sharing that, Kim. Yeah, sorry, we got Stephen back. And again, I am
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. Wait, we were saying that you were demonstrating what anxiety looks like.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
Bye.
right, live. I forget where I left off. I think I was, saying like, I put a lot of trust and a lot of faith in what the doctors were advising me. And I think, the shame in life is like, you never can go back. All you can do is move forward. And so what I've tried to do is just use my experience to make, other families' experience better moving forward. And storytelling is I think the quickest way to create the change that we need. And so if my story helps anyone, um, and I know it has, and it's a really good feeling to know that you have the ability to help people, and it's part of you know healing, for me, for my daughter, for my family. But
Well,
my
Stephen,
situation,
before you kind of had left off, she had kind of gotten diagnosed, I guess, and you guys were kind of getting some help, but then I feel like that was the initial
okay.
reach out, and then you didn't get past that. So if you can kind of take us through the rest of it, I feel horrible asking you to do that. I don't want you to relive that, but
No,
I
no,
think
that's all
I
right.
think it's
That's all
important.
right. It's important to go through it kind of chronologically. So
Right.
the first doctor, um, I believe my wife went to, was the pediatrician. And at that appointment, um, she went in, she went with our daughter. The pediatrician kind of helped get the neurological testing scheduled for my daughter when she expressed, she had a bunch of questions for why does our daughter behave or act this way or do this or do that.
Right.
Um, and just for peace of mind, she said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to schedule. And it was a family friend of ours. the doctor, and she said, "I'm going to schedule these just for peace of mind." Everything came back good, but she had screened her for postpartum depression, and
Mm.
it wasn't until after the funeral, when I saw this doctor at the funeral, because she was a family friend, and she said, "Steven," she said, "I." She was crying hysterically. She said, "I wanted to tell you so bad. Her screening was horrific when
Oh,
you read the things she wrote down." But she said, "Because of HIPAA,
oh,
I
wow.
couldn't even call you and tell you." And I'm like, I was so furious that she expressed what was going to happen. And you can't even tell me as a father. And like, that's another area of
Well, so
medicine where
as
like
a
we have
husband, you're not, so as if HIPAA protects a wife's information from the husband as well, is that
from
something?
everyone,
I
Whenever,
believe you have
unless
to
they
sign
sign
a
a
release.
waiver.
Yeah, I was gonna say you have to sign a
oh
release if you
wow.
want. So, like when you go to a doctor's office, they'll say, "Are there people that you will add to your list to get your information released to if need be?"
So
And yeah,
let me just ask a stupid question, right? So if I get married and have a baby with a woman and she goes to the doctor on her own and they diagnose her with postpartum psychosis or postpartum depression, and she's saying she's having thoughts of harming our child and harming herself,
they can't warn
there's
you unless yeah.
there's no.
And so, and that's another discussion around pregnancy. But then you get into, women that are in abusive relationships and everything. And,
uh,
it's a lot of times to protect them, but I think the conversation around, sharing that information, there's got to be a safe way to do it with
mhm.
partners. And you have to understand too at this point, like I'm like most people, most dads, like I'm totally unaware of postpartum depression. I have no idea what's going on, but I'm concerned for my wife and I know it's not good.
Does it
And
does it activate a case within Child Protective Services? Like, medical's really good if you don't want to get the COVID vaccine. I don't want to get into politics, but if you don't want to get the COVID vaccine for your child, that will initiate sometimes the Child Protective Services, whatever, blow up, and then they're going to come say you're a threat to your child because you don't want to get your child
well,
vaccinated.
I
It
also
just
think we're talking about 13 years ago, before
oh,
the country
right,
was
okay,
so divided about
right,
everything. I mean, I think it was just a situation where the pediatrician was really worried after
mhm,
reading her screenings, and directed her towards you know seeing a psychiatrist, psychologist, and all these other appointments. And then, and that's where I kind of started to that's where I started to understand that, like, oh my goodness, if you're like, so I think in that period in time, women's health and mental health were the two least funded areas of medicine, which was like,
oh
if you're
wow,
a woman and you're having a mental health episode, like,
mhm,
you're screwed. It is so challenging for anybody to
mhm,
find the care they need, but especially a mother that's pregnant, or up to a year postpartum. And then it started this. Her last 2 weeks was 7 different hospitals or crisis centers in the last 13 days that we physically went to, but every day involved calls with crisis centers and some sort of emergency services. And I mean, there wasn't a hospital in the city that like didn't have a red flag, like that knew who she was, knew what the problem was. The problem was when we would show up, no one knew what to do with her,
mhm,
because she was like, she, as we heard almost at every appointment, wasn't like them, and
right,
them being like the crazies that were, on the other side of the glass wall. And so I always say now, like what does crazy look like?
mhm,
Or, is there a right way to say that you're having thoughts of harming or killing yourself versus, like
right,
where you're taken serious?
right,
Because all that happened at all of these doctor's appointments was really just a lot of judging and a lot of looking and a lot of questions, like kind of like a CYA on the doctors, saying like, we understand that you're struggling, and we understand that you're having these thoughts, and we understand that you're scared to go home, but you have a college education.
right. Was it like get back in
You
your
have,
Mercedes and go back to your country club? You'll be fine. Just have a martini and
well,
you'll
to
be.
be
Is that
honest
right?
with you, at the time I had a used car dealership, and so I did at the auction, I went and bought the biggest, safest car that I could find, that I could afford. And it was a used 10-year-old big S-Class tank Mercedes. And we pulled up to this local
Yeah.
crisis center in Pittsburgh. And, we were the first people there, and we were met with, at the front door. Um, you pulled up here in a Mercedes Benz and you think you have problems. And
Mm.
we sat there. It was the last doctor's appointment that we went to. That was on a Friday, and we waited there all day long, until about 4 or 5 o'clock at night. And they called us back, and we were met with another social worker, and she spent like an hour and a half with us. And she said, unfortunately, and I think there were like 3 or 4 psychiatrists working that afternoon, and everyone else that walked in, from what I could see, got to see the psychiatrist, because we were having med issues. Like, that's why you have to go to an ER to see a psychiatrist, because if you call one on the phone, like a private practice one, you'll never get in. So we were always like, we would call 911, and then I was left as a husband making the decision. Like, at the time, there were 3 hospitals in our region with psych wards, and I was always left with like choosing the lesser of the 3 evils, like, because every city has them, and every one of them has a negative,
Hmm.
reputation. And it was like, which one is going to be less traumatizing for my wife? And so eventually, like, we made our rounds to all of them, but it was, um at this particular facility, she said, unfortunately, all the doctors are gone for today. And, but like, we promise we'll see you if you come. You'll get to see the doctor if you come back on Monday. And like, she was dead on Monday. And she wasn't seen just because we pulled in the wrong car. And then we would go to, on our 4th wedding anniversary, we went to a different hospital with a psychiatric unit. And it was like I said, it was our 4th wedding anniversary. I came home, and you know, I had bought her, um, earrings as like a push present with our daughter's birthstone. And then I bought her a matching necklace to give to her, on our anniversary. And I came home with flowers and all that. And she was just sitting at the kitchen table, and she was just sobbing and just saying, like, I don't deserve you. And you're gonna leave me because I'm never gonna get better again. And you deserve so much more than me. And, um, and she it was like her brain got erased. Like, she was in new home sales, and like, and she was the best at what she did. And, and that's the second hardest hit demographic of women, are like professional type A women that are used to getting feedback, used to getting raises, used to getting accolades for their work.
Mm.
And, they're super organized. And like, my wife she couldn't get in bed if the bed wasn't made, or there was a dirty dish in the sink. Like, the house was always perfect.
Yeah.
Everything was planned. Everything was executed perfect every day, like, very regimented. And when you have children like that, all that goes out the window. There's no planning, there's no schedule, there's no, babies can't give feedback. And for a lot of women, that's really hard. And, so, on this particular night, she's crying, and, and she was the kind of person that loved to, we would love to, when we decided to have a baby, it was like, we didn't get dressed up and go out and have fun with our friends anymore. We were in our sweats on the couch, like, let's what, and she'd be like, are we losers, babe? Like, we don't do anything anymore. And I'm like, I think this is like God's way of telling us it's time to have a baby. And then at least we don't look like jerks avoiding our friends. Like,
Right.
we have an excuse to not go out anymore. So, and unlike a lot of people too, like, I never realized how hard and the struggle so many people have trying to get pregnant. Like, it was like one time we had a plan when we were going to try, and there was one time, she was unplanned, but it was just one time, and it was the very first time. And like, a couple weeks later, she's like, babe, I'm pregnant. And I'm like,
Oh, wow.
I'm the man, like, first, and
First try.
not real, you know what I mean? Like, just the stupid things we do, but little things like that are so hard for people that are struggling to get pregnant to hear. And
Right.
people need to know, like, that was my reaction, but that's not the appropriate reaction,
Right.
to have. And so we end up at the ER, and they're looking at her, and she, she, she loved to turn it on, put her heels on, throw a dress on, get dressed up, go out, dance, have fun. Like, and she felt so bad, like she was a failure as a wife, because it was our anniversary and she couldn't get heels on, she couldn't get dressed up. And I still remember we walked in and she had her favorite jeans on and she had this trench coat that I bought her on, and she looked as beautiful as ever. And we went in and her hair was nice, and her teeth were white and straight, and everyone's like, you're not crazy. But no one was looking, no one was listening to the things she was
Right.
saying. And so, like, that would be my advice to other people that have a loved one going through it. Like, does your loved one sound, are they saying things that they normally wouldn't?
Mhm.
Because if they are, there's a big problem. And I know now, like, that psychosis is a total detachment from reality. And if someone's in one, they're not the same person that you know and love, and they're capable of literally anything.
Right.
And so anyway, we're they bounce us from floor to floor, and we end up on this floor, which was the psych unit floor, and we end up in this glass room with two doors that locked from the outside. So once you get in, you're not getting out. And we were met by another LCSW, like social worker, and she and my wife's going like, I'm crazy, like I need to be admitted. And she's saying, no, you're just struggling and you have a new baby, and she's like, no, you don't understand. And we're in there for hours. And I remember, just as a father, being so overwhelmed and being like, I I don't know I don't know what to do, because I can't stay up 24 hours a day. I have a new business. I have a new baby. I have a sick wife. And, like, life doesn't stop. All the other daily things have to go on. There's a house that needs taken care of. And I have the best family and friends in the world. But there was so much, like, my mother was aware of what was going on. My siblings were aware of what was going on. But, like, she was like, if anyone knows I'm going through this, everyone's going to think I'm crazy for the rest of my life. And no one could, like, she was mortified at how crazy she felt. And she's like, if I do anything, everyone's going to know I'm crazy. And so I'm talking to the doctor, and I'm a mess. I believe I was, emotional. And I'm just saying, I don't know how to protect her.
Mhm.
And he said, he kind of pulled me aside so she couldn't hear. And he said, listen, everything's going to be fine. And I'm like, what do I do? How do I protect her? And he said, women like her, she, they don't commit suicide in sloppy ways. She would never do it in a way that would compromise her appearance. She would never want anyone to remember her not looking her best. Women like her only commit suicide in two ways: they asphyxiate themselves in the garage using their vehicle, or they overdose on pills. And those were the instructions I left the hospital with: get car keys out of the house and get any prescription medications that she wasn't recently prescribed for the postpartum depression out of the house, and she's going to be fine. And I'm so mad at myself for trusting him. And it didn't sound right to me, but I didn't know. I guess I just wanted a plan, and he was the professional, and I
Yeah.
just trusted that what he was telling me was right. And I remember that, like, her telling them, like, I need to be on that side of the glass wall. Like, I need that, like, I'm scared if you send me home, something bad's gonna happen. And it was like, you're not like them. You're not like them. You're not like them. And so that was, and the questions were always the same. Like, at one of the appointments, it was like, well, what level of education do you have? You have a master's degree. Okay. Well, are you employed? Yes, I'm employed. Are you financially secure? Yes. Do you have food insecurity at home? No, we own restaurants, like my family. Um, and the big question, and she really melted down, was, do you have faith? And her father's a minister. And she says, yes, I grew up in the church. And she started crying really hard. And she said, that's the only reason why I'm still here, because I know what's going to happen if I do what I keep thinking I'm going to do, because I don't know on any other way to make it stop. The anxiety, and hearing phantom baby cries, and just, and I know, I, um, I think as a father, I didn't realize how bad things were until one of the doctors was telling us, like, you just have to keep her occupied. You have to keep her busy. And so, like, my brother's like, the Pirates had made the playoffs for the first time in like 21 or 22 years or something. And the city was like electric. Everyone was all excited. And, he's buying tickets for the whole family to go to the game. And I remember we were sitting at that game, and the whole way down, she was going, like, I can't make it through a whole game. I can't do this with this big crowd. Like, I like everyone's going to know I'm crazy. And I just remember at one point, like, we were sitting on the first base line down low, and she was like, I have to go to the bathroom. And she got up and she walked up the steps to the bathroom. And I remember, like, 2 minutes went by and I freaked out because my thoughts were, she's going to jump off that level of the stadium. Like, and I grabbed my brother, and he was my triplet brother, and he passed 9 months after my wife did. And I said, something bad's really going to happen. We have to go. And I remember just getting up and running,
Mm.
and then waiting for, like, and I'm looking to see if something had happened, and nothing did. And she came out of the bathroom and she was like, you were scared to even let me go to the bathroom. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, you know how crazy I am. And but I remember going home from that game. We were driving back, it was just the two of us, and she says, Pop, I know what we have to do. And I said, this was actually coming home from a hockey game that a friend gave us tickets to, because I'm calling friends, like, the doctors are like, you have to keep her busy, you have to keep her mind occupied. And it was a couple nights prior, and she just said, babe, I think I know what we have to do. I'm not cut out for this. I'm not. She said, I think we should just give Adrian up for adoption,
Mm.
and we could go back to the old life that we had, and everything will be fine again. And that was my, like, aha moment where I knew things were, like, really, really way worse
Yeah.
than I had even imagined. And obviously that wasn't an option. And I'm like, babe, what are you talking about? There's absolutely no reality where we can. And she's like, I can't do this. And over those 2 weeks, at her final doctor's appointment, I'm kind of bouncing all over. She had an appointment. She had been talking to the social worker that was at our very first appointment that gave her the, like, anxiety 3 coping mechanisms. And that doctor kind of tasked her with, you know, the OB that delivered your daughter was young and inexperienced, and what she did to you in the delivery room was unacceptable, and you need to let her know. And so my wife went into that appointment, and she was mad, she was angry. Um, and she was a fighter. She was not someone that suffered in silence, and she was the first person to defend anybody, that she thought was wrong. And she never bit her tongue, and she defended me fiercely from the day I met her. And everyone she loved. And she went into this appointment, like, tasked with, another woman that works for the same practice, that it's her responsibility to put this doctor in her place. And that's what she did. She went in and she said, how could you do this to me?
Mm.
How did you miss the delivery? Like, my whole life is falling apart. And it was the same doctor when she went in, kind of like an emergency visit, because she started hearing things and the medicine was making her feel crazy. And she said, I need to be on a different medicine. And the doctor said, no, you don't need a different medicine. You just need more. And she doubled the dose on her on the Zoloft, and then put her on these accelerators and all these, other medicines to make it work quicker. And she was the one that kept saying, well, it has to be 2 weeks, like 2 weeks, it's going to kick in and you're going to feel better. And exactly at 2 weeks, she was gone on the 14th day. But she went into this appointment and she just, how could you do this to me? How could you miss? And she said, um, something along the lines of, like, when I picked her up from that appointment, I had something to do. So I dropped her off and my mother met her there. And she, like, we had a puppy that it was like I just recently had to put her down a couple weeks ago. But she loved that dog. at Lucy, and so everywhere she went, Lucy went, and so my mom went so she could have Lucy while um, Alexis was back with the doctor, and she went back by herself. And what she went armed with information she had looked up online, and she had looked into like she thought she would be a big candidate for like to do like hormone replacement therapy with estrogen patches.
Mm.
And when she brought that up with the doctor, after I picked her up, I said she was very calm when she got in the car, and I said, "What changed?" And she said, "I just went in and I told the doctor, what has happened because of the delivery, and I asked her about the estrogen patches that she had told me about, and she just told me that I wasn't a candidate for estrogen patches, that it wouldn't help my condition." And she said, "Listen, and the doctor told her this. She said, you're just not cut out for this. I don't think you should try to have any more women or any more children. You should just go on birth control and not have any more children." And she was so calm, like the anxiety she had and the energy around her for these weeks after our daughter was born. I mean, it was palpable. Like you could cut it, you could feel it. Anybody that was around her, and it was like it had all dissipated. And I was like, "Well, what changed? Like, you seem so calm." And she was in the car and she was like, "You know what, Pop? I just realized that I'm looking too far down the road. And I need to just live in the moment." And like, I now know that, like, in that appointment, she had resigned because she knew that this was going to be over soon. And,
So hold on, the same doctor that was responsible for what I would say is like the initiating event was also came back and said, "Hey, you're not cut out for this. Don't have any more
yes.
children. Get on birth control." Like, who? I would. I don't know. I don't know. That would infuriate
And
me.
so it still infuriates me. And so, the only thing I can do now moving forward is change other people's story for them. I mean, it's the only consolation, just like the Clancy trial. Like, I believe the only good that can come from this tragedy is like healthcare reform. Like, we have to do better. The system has to change, and we need to expose these gaps that women fall through, like my wife. And we need to start building bridges, and we need to connect OBs with psych, and we need to make sure that these moms, that my wife's reality, my story's reality, isn't a reality for any more mothers, that the Clancy family's reality isn't the same reality for other mothers. And the reality is, the crazy thing is, like, my story, the Clancy story, this happens every day in every city in America. This is not a news story.
Right.
I thank God that Lindsay survived that fall, because I believe, had she not, like, none of us would know any of this.
Mm,
There wouldn't be this big trial.
right.
And there wouldn't be this huge light on this topic. And so right now, like, it's important. I feel like the mainstream media has an obligation to, not just cover the tragedy, but to cover solutions. And so now here we are 13 years later, like, I would, like, my wife has been working her butt off since the day she got up there,
Mm,
and pulling strings, and just like the path we've been on, from fundraising and advocacy, and finding the right healthcare system that was willing to do the right thing despite having a program that's not like really sustainable. It's not an area of
right.
medicine that makes money.
Right.
But I was lucky enough. I got two executives. I got the head of women's health from Allegheny Health Network, and a really amazing woman on the health insurance end at Highmark Health, and both were at the tail end of like really amazing healthcare careers, and both had lost their husbands. And we had this meeting. I brought my sister, and we all just cried our eyes out together. And I'm like, "You have to do better. Like, my wife deserved better." And they were like, "You know what? We're going to, because she did deserve more,
Mm,
and we have to do better." And it started this like amazing series of events with, like, we met every Friday at the hospital where our facility is for years. And it
nice.
started with like After that meeting, there was a meeting with like all the key players, the president of the hospital, the head of the chair of women's health, the chair of behavioral health, the chair of OBs, the president of the health system, like all the people that were like that need to talk regularly that typically don't in most healthcare systems, from what I've learned, showed up every week
Mm.
for me and for my daughter and for the women of Pittsburgh. And every Friday, like by the end of it, like the janitors were there. They're like, we want to help. And nurses were showing up and ophthalmologists were showing up. And there was this, again, like palpable, like energy that you could feel that like the whole hospital wanted to be a part of. And all these doctors that are like now since retired were like, this is an opportunity for us
Mm.
to do the right thing, but also for us to leave our mark on healthcare. Like how in 2013, in the greatest country in the world, can you leave a mark in healthcare and be a part of something at like ground floor, like a new area of medicine that to me is so crazy that you have this whole area of medicine and labor and delivery that occupies like a whole floor of a hospital, and that 1 in 5, and that number is way too low because so many people still suffer in silence. If we do our jobs right, that number is going to get worse, and it's going to be 1 in 4, 1 in 3, or whatever. But 1 in 5, we know, suffer, from some sort of maternal mental health disorder after delivering a baby. And like, how can you get away for decades, for generations, with neglecting 20% of a population that you just made a ton of money off of delivering their baby, and you offer not like how did we get here? How did they get away with this for so long?
Mm.
And so like,
I,
that's my whole thing. I'm so excited because I believe, and I've seen it change a lot over the last 13 years, and I just have this like nervous energy because of this case, and I hope for Lindsay, like I don't care, what the jury decides. Like she has suffered and will suffer
right,
forever. She's already been through enough.
right.
And I hope that that this story leads to change in healthcare that gives her some sort of comfort that she is a that this story is a big reason for the change that I believe is coming.
I have a couple of questions for you. So, okay, so one, you said something a second ago where you said that in the delivery, is it something traumatic? Because I was explained to my girlfriend is a RN, and she explained it to me as you're producing all these hormones because the baby, your body needs them because you're producing a baby, and then the baby needs the hormones and these different things. I'm assuming. I mean, that's probably
Yeah.
yeah, incorrect. But when the baby's born, then all of a sudden there's just this huge dump, and that's
Yeah.
kind of where this mental state alteration kind of comes in. But is it also? You said something like during the delivery, you said with your wife was kind of a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
Is that something that's common, or is it
So
just something?
yeah, yeah, that's
Is it
common,
either
but there are
or?
all these factors. Like if you're a single mom, if you're a young mom, if you're in an abusive relationship, if you have a prior history of mental health disorder, like there's
Mhm.
all these contributing factors. Like
Right.
if you, and the crazy thing is, I say 1 in 5, but if you are a mom and you live below the poverty line, that number is 1 in 2. It's every other mother
Oh wow.
experiences this.
Okay.
And so, I mean, the numbers are astounding. Like twice as many women will suffer from postpartum depression this year as breast cancer.
Oh wow.
Why are there, you know,
Crazy.
like my wife was basically told, go home. You've built this amazing foundation. You've done everything by the rules. You went to college. You got married. You're in a stable relationship. You bought a home. You have a career. You've done all these things. But because she was so organized and worked her butt off and did things the right way, no one would help her.
Yeah.
But like, could you imagine as a woman going in with breast cancer and it's like, hey, you have this great foundation. You have a husband. You have a career. Like, that's going to be enough.
What's that have to
You're
do
going to
with
be all right.
almost
People
makes
would
me
lose
like
their minds, but for some reason it happens in mental health all the time. And it's like people should be losing their minds. Like the health systems need to be held accountable. I've never met an OB, and I've spoken all over the country, internationally, thousands of people, so many times. And I've never met a psychiatrist, I've never met a psychologist, and I've never met an OB that didn't want to do more for their patients.
Right.
But when the first couple years I started advocating and I would speak at these conventions, like, there'd be like 1,000 eyeballs on you, and they would all be like, there's no way that you're doing what you're telling us that you're doing with this program you're developing in Pittsburgh, because they're like, we've been asking for this for years, and all we ever hear from executive leadership is no. We can't do that. It's too expensive. There's not enough money in it. We always hear no. And I'm like, they've never told me anything but yes.
Right.
And I think for years there was a lot of them that were like, this guy's like a loony. Like there's no way he's doing what he's telling us he's doing.
Right.
And like our vision from the get-go was not just to have like an intensive outpatient program with, we have 73 or 7,800 square feet, and we've helped so many thousands of women. But the goal was always to have like an inpatient psychiatric unit that keeps moms and babies together.
Okay.
And because the core belief in our program is that, the basic problem with postpartum depression is like moms lost that they don't have that bond with their child that they think they're supposed to have, that everyone expects, and it's hard, and they feel like they're a bad mom, and they feel like, my wife would always tell me like, you're so good with her, Pop, how are you so good with her, and I can't do anything. And I'd be like, babe, I'm not doing anything, I'm just, like, I just listening to music and holding her. I'm not doing anything special. Like you
Right.
feed her, you brought her into this
Right.
world. Like I'm not doing anything.
I'm just mimicking you.
My,
Like, what
my
are you
husband calls himself the spare human.
Yeah. Because babies need moms. That's what they need. I mean, like they're like, I had to step in after my wife, and it breaks my heart that my daughter has to, grow up and live her whole life without, knowing her mom. And thank God I have two amazing sisters and the best parents and the best godmother and the best mother-in-law and all these strong, beautiful, intelligent women to kind of guide. I mean, my daughter was like 3, I think, when she realized that she didn't have a mom. Like she thought she had 4 moms or 5 moms.
Oh wow.
And she was like, what do you mean? Like, Nana's not my mom? I'm like, no, she's your grandma. What do you mean? Zia Natalie's not my mom? No, she's your aunt. And then, and she, there's a big part of Alexis that's still alive through the work that we get to do and a connection. And like, I talk to her every day, like a crazy
Yeah.
person. But, like, I wouldn't be talking to you guys if it's not for her. Like, she's brought me hundreds and hundreds of friends
Right.
throughout, because of what happened. And I've traveled the world, and I've seen, and it's so uncanny, like the places where I get opportunities to speak. They're always places that we had on our bucket list where we wanted to go.
No.
And like there's no doubt, and it's like the best healing thing in the world for anyone. That not, my advice, like how do you deal with adversity, is like simplify your life. Do what made you happy as a kid. We stop doing it as adults. We lose who we are because we stop taking care of ourselves and start taking care of everyone else, and we put too much work into our careers and everything. And I had to learn, like I had to start doing the things that made me happy as a kid again, and guess what, they make me happy as an adult. And um and like when you go through, like for me it was like everyone would be like, how do you go to these conferences with like all women and talk about such a morbid topic? But for me it was healing because I was in a room with people that understood me. Like try talking to a group of guys at the bar about how your
Right.
wife got this mental health disorder and took her life. Like it's not good, and I'm crying and everyone's like, this guy's lost his mind.
Yeah.
And but it's relief when you're in a room with people that speak the same language, that understand you. It just lets you to feel understood.
Right.
And so, like everybody, like get behind something that you believe in. Be a part of the, like you don't get to, you shouldn't, like I drives me crazy. So many people, all they do is complain, 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 complain. Like in my eyes, it's like you don't get to complain unless you've tried to be a part of the solution. If you try to solve the problem and it's still there, then you can complain. But
Right.
if you have not tried to do one thing to be a part of the solution, keep your mouth shut.
That's right.
And
You know,
because that's where the healing happens. That's where the understanding happens. That's where, and that's where you meet like-minded people that, that's what it takes to create change. I'm one person of so many hundreds and thousands of people that I know have been fighting the same fight for a long time. I think I get, you know, and I feel really fortunate and blessed to have a stage and a platform and people that listen. I think it's because I'm one of the few men that actually do it.
Mm.
Um, and I'm grateful for that. And I think because I am a man that speaks about this women's health issue, I think it makes it. I've always been like, this is not a women's health issue. This is a family health issue. And anyone that wants to argue that can look at what it's done to my family, how it's hurt me, how it's, my daughter. There's a lot of difficult situations and conversations that we've had to have. She's turning 13 next week. It's a lot, and
She's a character too. I saw the video of her. Like she kind of, it seemed like she kind of took over. I don't know what if it was the USA
she's
Today.
got a lot of magic. She's got a lot of magic,
He just like
and
took over the interview. It's like my daddy gets to do this and do that. And I was like, this is freaking awesome, little girl,
yeah.
man.
And when they did that interview, she kicked me out of the room. She's like, "I'm doing it alone. You're not allowed to be in here, Daddy."
So
And she
I
was
was
like
right. He
5 or 6,
he took over.
and
It was freaking awesome.
the one thing I've learned through all the advocacy over the years was, at first I told my wife's story because she couldn't, and then I'm like, hey, I have a story here as a husband and as a father. And I want people to know how it's affected me. And not just how it's affected me, but like what I wish I did differently. I wish I spent the 40 weeks that my wife was pregnant at every doctor's appointment.
Right.
I wish I did, but I didn't. I was like most men in this country. And I went to the sonogram to find out the sex of the baby.
Mm.
And I feel like that's the appointment that most dads go to. But and I still think facilities like ours are extremely important. But I also think the conversation around what it means to be a good partner and a father and a husband needs to change as well. Because
I had a question in that same vein. I wrote down. I have a question. So, like, I'm very ill informed about this topic. I feel like you probably were too prior to all this. Like, is there something that we need to do as just a society or communities in educating? Father, I was thinking about couples, like people that are fixing to get married. They have Bible studies that's for couples that are about to get married. Maybe there's some type of space where you find that you can educate couples or you can educate men in general to like, if you hear these things, if like you said, if she's not the same person she was, if you start hearing these like self-destructive thoughts or like she's a type A and now she's just like completely scattered and all just a different personality, like I feel like as a man now, I'm going to be looking and listening. Is there? I got to fly in here. Sorry.
yeah, well,
It's
I
gonna
I
be
think that's such a important discussion to have, and it doesn't extend just. I think the most important thing people have to understand is like you can never expect a doctor to know your loved one the way you do.
right.
And a woman can hide and suffer in silence from the whole world, but she can't hide from you. A lot of times the person, mom better than she knows herself, and everything about her eating patterns, her personality, her everything. And when you see changes, like we need to arm ourselves with the right tools and the right questions to ask to advocate for the women we love when they are unable to, or even if they're willing to. But we need to. It can't feel as lonely
Mm.
seeking mental health care as it does for most. Like it's the only area of medicine where I feel like it's like, okay, I'm struggling, and it's like, well, go talk to your psychiatrist, go see your psychologist, and do it alone. Like if you broke a bone, or if you have cancer, or if you have like any physical health issue, like you're never getting that treatment alone. There's always someone you love with you. But when it
Mm.
comes to mental health, it's always you alone, and
Right.
navigating the system is so difficult. Um, but I wish as a father that I had spent, 40 weeks, that's 10 months. That's a long time. That's a lot of doctor's appointments.
Mm.
Familiarity matters. And when you are familiar with the doctors that you choose to deliver, the practice that labor and delivery practice OB team that you choose to deliver your child, like just knowing the doctor, having met them before, makes it so much easier to reach out for help. It
Mm.
makes it so much easier for them to call you back because they know you. It makes it so much easier, you know, maybe mom's fine the first trimester and the second, but the third she starts changing for you to say, hey, I've noticed she's behaving a little different like this, or,
Mhm.
she's a little more sad than she normally is, or, she's way more sedentary. She's usually really active and she's just kind of laying around, or she's, my wife obsessed over the nursery and everything from the car seat to the mattress on the crib, the decorations in the, I mean, it was like, I'm going, oh my goodness, like, let's just buy a mattress and put it in the crib. Like, but it had to be the best. And she had to look at every review,
Right.
and, and it was like, and it was crazy. I mean, it was like, it was a lot. And,
It's
but I
exhausting.
wish I had had those
Yeah.
conversations with those doctors before the baby was delivered. An interesting thing with our facility that I don't think anybody, I know certainly myself, but I don't even think that the doctors there, and it's also important to note that everything I'm telling you, like, I'm not a doctor.
Right. Yeah.
I am an advocate and a fundraiser, and I only speak about lived experience. And I have learned a lot along the way, though. And you know, I so regret not finding the time to go to all those doctor's appointments. And I wish there was a way, if anyone important in DC is listening, like, let's change the conversation around
Mm.
paternal leave, not just like after, at postpartum, but during pregnancy. Like, I feel like moms become mothers the day they find out they're pregnant. Everything
Mm.
changes. What they eat, they stop taking Tylenol when they get headaches. They stop, no more lunch meat. They start paying attention to their body and being that best, healthiest version of themselves. All this, and like,
Right.
I really feel like dads become dads, like in the delivery room.
Mhm.
And 10 months is a long time to learn and to have difficult conversations and to build a, rapport relationship with these doctors and a familiarity. And I just think, like, if that conversation changes, and I think it starts at your first appointment with, when after mom finds out she's pregnant, like, I think the doctors and the healthcare systems need to engage with mom and say dad needs to be here whenever possible, and there needs to be a checklist of questions, and things that dads can ask, look for, you know, behavioral changes,
Mm.
dietary changes, all these things throughout those 10 months. Because what we found out in our program was we have more women in treatment that are still pregnant than have actually delivered. And the
Yeah.
amazing thing about that is the sooner moms get treatment, the quicker they recover.
Mm.
And, there's so much wrong with it about, women are scared to take their meds because they're breastfeeding, and the breastfeeding itself is there's so much shame. Like, what a weird area of medicine where it's like it's shameful to get help. Like, would
Right.
you be ashamed of yourself to go get a cast for your broken arm? Absolutely not.
No. Right.
And it's just ridiculous. And having lived it and learned it, so much along the way, I'm going, like, this is, I call this like mental health care, like, should be common sense health care, especially involving moms and babies. You have the most vulnerable population during the most vulnerable time of their lives.
Well,
How
and
dare
it's
us neglect them the way that we do right now?
our jobs as men, I believe, to protect the vulnerable, right? And we kind of talked
Yeah.
about this in society and especially on our home front. So I kind of want to transition now to this tragedy strikes you and your family. You lose your wife. God rest her soul. And then you decide you meet some wonderful people able and willing to join you in this fight. And so, if you want to talk about, and I looked it up. If you guys are online and you're listening, or you see this later on, I looked up just the Alexis Joy Foundation, and it does pull up your website. So it's the Alexis. You're gonna have to give me. It's a long name, but let's hear about what you're doing. I saw that you've helped over 6,000 mothers through this whole process get help, and so
No,
just
that number is much higher now.
right.
We're a small
No.
grassroots nonprofit. It's like my sister, me, my cousin, a couple people. We do one fundraiser a year, but it's, our reach is far greater than our. We have Alexis Army, our supporters, which are huge and amazing, but the nonprofit itself, the fundraising, the advocating falls, mostly on me. So I should do a better job with the website and everything. But we're over 32,000 families helped now,
Oh,
and
wow.
and the
And what
beauty
is
in the
the website
pandemic,
too? What is the website and all that?
is, everything switched to virtual, and these telemedicine appointments, and so that gives our facility the capacity to help so many more women.
Awesome.
You have so many women in rural areas or people that, have transportation issues and other children at home. And like the biggest no call, no show demographic in healthcare is moms, because moms always put themselves last and everyone else first. And, it turns out if you offer transportation and childcare, women show up to their doctor's appointments. And that's one of the things I'm proud of, with our program. But then virtually, and it's also like a get out of jail free card for the health systems. Like you have an area of medicine that is historically, loses money, but now you can treat hundreds of more women a week virtually and keep money coming in. And these programs are much more sustainable. And I don't want to talk about the business end of healthcare. I will now that I kind of brought it up, just from a personal perspective, the strain on health insurance companies, um, it's wild to me. Like I'm one story. My wife is one mother
Mm.
that was lost, that has cost, it's been millions. My wife was in intensive care for 2.5 days before she passed. I think those medical bills, when I got the bill at my house, I mean, I didn't pay it, but it was like we had insurance, but it was like, I think $850,000. And then as a single father raising a princess, I'm, and most people that have experienced, like I clearly, have some PTSD from finding her and everything like that. But like, I don't. I go to the ER immediately if something feels off. Like I need to be alive for my daughter. If something happens to me, like she's an orphan, so
Yeah.
I go to the ER. And I spent 5 years every week, with a psychologist doing talk therapy, which I'm the biggest proponent of. My whole entire adult life, I was like, you know, psychology, what a crock. Blah, blah, blah. I can't even begin to explain to you when you find the right psychologist, how beneficial it is, the most important work you could ever do on yourself.
Mm.
Um, and I hated it. Every week I'd be having a good day and I'd have to wake up and I know I'd have to go rehash these things and my good day would be ruined. I'd be crying and sobbing. But I mean, my psychologist left me with when I finished, when he was like, "You don't need me anymore. You got this." And we had weeded everything, like who brings the best out of me, who brings the worst out of me, how to have difficult conversations. I'd been out of my parents' house for 10 years, and here I am, 30 years old, moving in back at home with my parents, and I'm bringing a 5.5 week old infant home with me, and I'm feeling like the victim, and I'm drinking, and I own a bar, and I'm doing everything wrong, but I'm like, but I had the victim mentality.
Mm.
And what a horrible way to live your life. It's so hard to live your life being mad and sad every day. And as soon as I made the decision that I didn't want to live like that, and I say it all the time when I speak, but I'm like, the most the most contagious thing in the world is a smile. And when you go through hard times, like you can be mad, angry, sad, whatever, and like all that's going to happen is like everyone in the room, you're going to walk in and they're going to scatter like cockroaches because nobody wants to deal with it. They'll
That's
all be there in the beginning, but you do it long enough, people are like, we can't handle this anymore. But the one thing that makes the entire world want to help? A smile.
that's right.
And everybody came to my rescue and helped me in ways that I could never repay them. But I have the best people in the world surround. My whole life is surrounded. My daughter and I both with the most amazing people. And I think for people that don't have that support system, there's support systems. Just go do something selfless. Get behind the cause you believe in, and that whole room is full of people that have the same passion, and
That's
they're
right.
usually good people because they're selfless giving back, and that's a
Mhm.
great place to start.
Right.
um and
Well,
so
That being said, Stephen, I need you to put on your fundraiser and your promoter cap. Where can people, if they want to help, like I'm sure you have resources on your website, if they know somebody that's going
Yeah.
through something like this, or if they want to donate to your cause, or if they want to help, or if they just want to find out more information or whatever, where can they go to do that in regards to your fundraiser?
Alexis Joy, www.alexisjoyfoundation.org. There's a link.
Oh no, we lost him. Oh no, he dropped again. Oh, okay.
He just crept in again.
Okay, there you go. You're good. So
No, there's a link there. We
you said
have
Alexis
our
Joy Foundation,
.org.
www.org. Okay, .org.
And then we have our annual, we do a golf outing. It's amazing. It's a great time. Um, it's the best golf outing. It's such a good day. We honor my brother that passed and my wife. All the proceeds go towards the cause. And we help women in any capacity. I mean, I've talked to other fathers in my shoes that just lost their wife, and it's hard, and and they're like, I have to go to work, and we've helped them with childcare. I never say no to anybody. I help any father, any mother, and any child, any family, any way possible, if we have the means to. And a lot of the women in our program, I mean, I couldn't imagine a mom, during the holidays that can't afford to, buy a gift for their child. And so we do a lot with gift cards for moms to make sure that they don't feel like that around the holidays. And a lot of women, like, what a lot of big problem, a lot of these medications they're prescribed, they have to take forever, and they can't even afford one script, let alone filling these scripts every week or every month. And so we do a lot with.
Oh no, we lost him again. Oh no. Stephen and I, I'll just kind of take over for a second. Stephen and I had a conversation. I guess we talked about a week ago. We talked for like an hour and a half, but he told me that we, as a nation, prescribe more antidepressants than the whole rest of the world combined. Imagine that. Like our nation.
But that's definitely by design. So I think a lot of this, like not to make this political in one way or another, but the anti-family sentiment and the state of healthcare being largely run by people with.
You're okay.
But I don't know why it keeps dropping. But anyway, we just try to help. We really just try to eliminate the barriers to care that prevent moms from getting the care that they deserve, and then reduce the stigma so it's not as scary for moms to reach out for help. And I think Pittsburgh is the city of champions for a lot of reasons, but I can't even begin to explain to you the way the city has rallied around me, my family, our cause. And I think the situation looks a lot different in Pittsburgh than it does for most of the country. And it makes me really proud to know that women in Pittsburgh have access to the care that they deserve, that we're giving them. And my heart just breaks, and I just want the conversation to keep going, because I want facilities like ours in every big city in America, and I want women everywhere to have access to the same resources women in Pittsburgh do. And Kim, I feel like I didn't get to hear any of your story because I just talk and I don't shut up.
No, you're fine. Well, I mean, like I had said a little bit before, but I come from the position where, like, for better or for worse, I've been in and out of mental health treatment my whole life. So by the time I did have my first child, first of all, my husband and I have been together since we were 15 years old, like 18 years together this past couple weeks.
That's beautiful.
And
Congrats.
so, like, that alone was like a solid foundation. But when I went through, and I mean, I still have the intrusive thought. Like I said, I have a 9-week-old, and PP, postpartum depression, for me manifests more in like intrusive thoughts and like anxiety. But like, because I've been doing cognitive behavioral therapy since I was like a child, I told Shane it's mostly like adoption stuff. I had at least the foundation to be able to say, like, okay, I know that, like, I like the cloud analogy. Like, I'm in the midst of a storm right now, but that's going to pass.
Yeah.
I feel crap right now and I'm scared, but that's going to go away.
Right.
And not everybody has that foundation. But what I was just saying to Shane the last time you got cut out was, I think that a huge thing that contributes to the state of mental health care is, one, the lack of support and the lack of, and the anti-family sentiment that exists in our country right now. It's like, be the girl boss, do the, like, worry about family later. So
Independent
like
woman.
oh no.
We lost it again. No, keep going. You're good.
Yeah, I just think that, because we've taken so much emphasis away from the family structure and the family unit, mothers are suffering a lot because of that. I also, again, I don't want to be disrespectful or anything. I think that Lindsay Clancy is a fraud and a liar. And I think that there's a lot of therapist-related testimony about particularly Lindsay Clancy. I watch a lot of the recaps because I don't have the time to watch the whole thing. But there was one of the professionals that they called to testify who said very plainly that the likelihood of her only having ever heard voices when she was killing her child or children is like zero. It's like near zero. It's like almost impossible for that to be the only instance. And then you look at the records of the logs she was taking. A lot of those logs looked like they were written on the same day, and again, that hasn't been proven yet. But that is another hypothesis because of how they were written. It seems as though it was premeditated, and that makes me angry. It's like a lot of people take advantage of the state of the mental health. Of mental health facilities in order to try to get away with something, or to try to get drugs, or to try to. There's a lot of ways that people manipulate the system, but the problem too is that once you profitize and once you monetize the value of a human being, that human being stops being a human being. And that's true in drug rehab. That's true in pregnancy and postpartum. That's true in all kinds of cancer, in diabetes. Like in all facets of the healthcare community, too much of the emphasis is on how do we make this profitable. And since the focus is on profit and not so much the patients are the ones that are suffering. And there's the other level that you have to navigate, that is like, you have to deal with the stigma of the diagnosis. You have to deal with the stigma of admitting you have a problem in the first place. But then on top of that, you have to worry that the professional that you're going to actually gives a shit and isn't going to do what that horrible woman did to your wife and say, oh, like basically rub some dirt in it and you'll be fine.
Walk it off. Yeah.
Like I had a therapist when I was 19 years old, asked to run away with me and be in a relationship with him. And when I denied this, he preemptively went to my parents and said, oh, she's untrustworthy and don't listen to her. And it was like, I don't think they would have believed me, so I wasn't even going to tell them. But it was one of those like, wow, like there are people with true capacity for evil. And what I said before when you cut out is, when you monetize the value of a human life, you introduce an element and you introduce the kind of person who's financially motivated. And that's a whole other sea of awfulness to have to navigate in the medical system. And you talk about, like you have this ridiculous bill from pregnancy, and like you think about, they collect your placenta. They can sell your placenta for like a lot of money. So why wouldn't the money that you make from that go towards paying for the person who just gave you the organ? You know what I mean?
Right.
There's so many little things like that where it's like, you even the person who is well-intentioned and wants to take care of the patient is working in a system that has turned that person into a dollar sign. And they have to check all the boxes to make sure they're making as many dollar signs as possible, or they don't get regarded as like a good doctor in the system. And then that causes a lot of domino effect problems. And like I said, it causes traumatic birth situations where like your wife, she was left by the doctor. Who's responsible for that? Because it's certainly not your wife. I had a friend too. It was her first time, and she hadn't really. She was having a hard time pushing, and the doctor said it was her fault for not knowing how to push. Like these are just like these little moments cause problems that sometimes ruin someone's life, take someone's life prematurely.
Mhm.
And these are not things that everybody thinks of until it happens to them. It's like, you know, until this tragedy hits your home, it's hard to like conceptualize of all the different things that could possibly go wrong. And that's where new mothers fall into it too, because it's like, you don't know what you don't know. I don't know what questions I'm missing to ask.
No.
I don't know, you know, and the birth experience alone, it, like, there's so many different varieties of things that could happen. And like, you could go into labor really quickly or really slowly, or you can have intense labor, or you can have breech labor, or you can, there's, you never know. How long am I going to be in labor? I don't know what to tell you. What is labor going to feel like? I don't know. What's going to happen when it comes to pushing? I'll figure it. It's like this whole you know, like, figure it out as you go thing. It puts a lot of women in positions where they have traumatic experiences, and they don't have the education to understand like what kind of effects certain inducing versus natural versus C-section versus, and then all of the different ways that the chemicals can interact. There's no way that an average person is going to just naturally think of all of this.
Right.
Right.
So again, that causes a lot of traumatic births, and traumatic births. I was just talking about this on X the other day. I think a big disservice is like telling women that they're not supposed to have the connection with their baby, because having that connection with their baby, it provides serotonin, it provides oxytocin. Having that bond is what helps a lot of women get through that period. So when you immediately separate the child from the mother starts to go through that. They don't get that immediate bond, and they start to feel like failures as parents. They start to feel like, oh, well, this is like the one thing I'm supposed to do. And there's a disconnect wherein like, I can't do it right, so I'm the problem. You know what I mean?
No,
and
for sure.
and that's a really horrible situation, especially like for first time moms. It got easier for me each time, because like, you know, there's the old trope that like, you know, you won't even take a Tylenol, and then like by my third one I'm like eating sushi, I'm eating meat, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm still exercising, taking good care of myself, but you're not like, oh my goodness, if I have one Tylenol, they're going to be born with autism, you know, like,
Right.
it's like, first-time mothers torture themselves in ways that
Well, the unknown, you know, you don't know, like you say, you don't know what you don't know.
and I mean, it's been true forever, but particularly post-COVID, in this like really antisocial age, it's hard to ask questions. And then you look online, and these mom groups, holy crap, they're toxic, they're horrible, and like they're so mean. And it's like, okay, I'll find this like nice group of women, and I'll ask my questions, and like I had to leave all of them. I haven't stayed
Doctor was
in a
hanging out
single
at
one.
probably.
Yeah, it's like, if it's not one thing, it's another. And let's be fair, to be honest, a lot of that is just the nature of women.
Yeah.
Women are way more petty with each other. Women have the hypergamous drive in order to like have hierarchy and establish hierarchy in a way that men don't necessarily. Men have a hierarchical structure, but like, you got a problem with the dude, you go outside and you handle it.
It's not as toxic, you know? It doesn't seem like.
Like women, it's like, oh, it's like, and I'm speaking from personal experience. I'm not saying that I'm free of this at all. Like the deep levels that this takes, especially like when you're pregnant or postpartum or whatever, it's a lot. It's a lot. And not having a solid community of people who have that's why community structure is so important. That's why family support is so important. That's why generational homes used to be a thing, because you would learn from mom, you would learn from the aunt, grandma would come over and help you like do laundry while you're nursing. Like we've robbed future generations of this communal living, where you have people around you that have been through it before, that depart this knowledge.
Your village.
Exactly. So you're going onto Facebook groups where women are evil and mean, and they don't have the familial or communal bond that you would typically before. And so and it's really easy to deperson somebody when you only know them over the internet. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just like, oh, like I'm just leaving a comment. Like, what does it really do? It's just the internet. And I fall victim to that all the time. I'm like, oh, the internet's not a real life. It's like, no, like we're all real. I mean, minus the bots and the scammers and whatever, but like we're all real people behind these accounts. And like, again, the communities that have like grown online, if you talk to most moms who have tried to get ingratiated in these little circles, more often than not you'll hear people say, I wish I hadn't done that. Like it was the worst experience of my life, everybody was mean, like judging me over every little thing, and somebody always knows better, and somebody always is like, yeah, it's a
Like
lot. So.
mean girls growing up. Well,
Yeah.
Steven, I won't keep you. I know Steven's having some I think you're having connectivity issues.
Yeah, it's been a disaster with my
That's
connection.
okay.
I
Do you want?
wanted
I'll
to.
give you.
There's
Yeah.
something
Go ahead.
important. A couple points I didn't get to bring up. Number one, if you have a loved one that's being prescribed any kind of antidepressant, that person should be screened by that doctor, or
Okay.
specifically for family history of bipolar disorder, because
Okay.
you know the effects of especially Zoloft, like with my wife.
Oh no. Well, yeah, I think he's getting into what we kind of talked about, the antidepressant aspect of it. And will,
Yeah. Well,
you look at the common thread between a lot of like the mass pewers in schools and stuff like that. Most of, I think, I don't know what the percentage is, but a
I
lot
think
of
if it's not the
antidepressant,
majority,
right?
it's like I think I've seen
It's in the
people claim
ninety
it's all
percent.
of them.
Yeah,
It's
and
it's
then
high. Well, I
yeah.
mean, yeah, it's
Well, and a lot of the same with the women that go through this. Like it seems like now, I don't know if this is a response to trying to get them through this depression or psychosis, but it does seem like there are some adverse things that are not. I think he said also not to we the statistic he gave me was the most we prescribe more antidepressants than any nation in the world, all the other ones combined.
hmm
And antidepressants are the least effective medicine, one of the most least effective medicines that we prescribe to patients. Like, so we do it
well,
more
that's
than
the
any
thing.
other country, and they're the least effective. Like, what
So
the?
this is the problem with mental health specifically, and I feel like honestly, even the next 5 years will really be acknowledging how barbaric the system is. And people get criticized for saying what I'm about to say, but two of the most fundamental pillars of mental health are your physical exercise, your physical capability, and your diet.
Yeah.
Our food is full of poison. Cancer can only really survive if it eats sugar. All right, and um,
Oh, I didn't know that.
so yeah, we'll go into that story because I can't. I've signed a non-disclosure, so I'm not allowed to talk about that for a certain amount of time. But yeah. Anyway, I mean, we won't talk about it because I've died in
Well,
a non-disclosure. Anyway,
let me change topics for you though. So when you said, I was thinking about when you said you kind of monetize, like when you monetize this situation, when they're trying to make it's like a flaw of I'm not, believe me, I'm not anti-capitalist, but it's a flaw of capitalism, right? Monetize everything, make money off of everything you can. But
right.
that it kind of I like to see patterns in things, and when I think about justice reform, like we've turned the prison for profits into the model to where it's not about reform, it's not about healing these people, it's not about getting them out of their old
Recidivism is
lifestyles.
good for the
Right.
system.
Right. And it's not about healing people, and it's kind of the same thing with this situation. It's not about
Keep them sick forever because
yeah.
if you cure people, then there's no industry.
Right. Well, and it's not about putting these people, the best version of themselves, out into society to be your
Right.
neighbor or your employee
No.
or your fellow churchgoer or whatever. It's about churning the numbers. It's about getting through that. And it's kind of sounds like the same thing with the medical industry as far as like churning. We're just churning. Like that lady had 3 other deliveries going on the same time as Stephen's wife, Alexis. Instead of like saying, okay, I've got this one birth, I'm not going to book another one until we get this one done, and then tomorrow we'll do another one. Like,
Well, that's a big reason why hospitals will try to push induction after a certain point because they want to be able to schedule, the births, and like while I understand that unnecessary induction is kind of the beginning domino, like I said before, that topples over, that leads to higher rates of C-sections.
Oh, we're like, we got a golf game to go to. We're gonna have to get out of here.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, I want to go on a holiday. We gotta make sure that you have this baby before Christmas. Like it's appalling, and like they'll all but admit it to you. You know what I mean? Like it's a matter of convenience for them,
Right.
and it's like, no, this is like the most natural part of life, but you still, most people. Well, I don't go to the hospital to give birth anymore because of this stuff. Quite frankly, I would rather tough it out in my living room.
Right.
And I know a lot of women feel the same way because they felt betrayed by the medical system, because the medical system, again, the 2 times I ever gave birth in a hospital, they threatened to call CPS on me for wanting to leave early. Even though, especially the second time, I lived 10 minutes away from the hospital. They were like, oh, we need to do a 24-hour check to do all these tests for your kid. I was like, I live 10 minutes down the road. I can be back in 10 minutes. I'm going home. They were like, we're calling CPS. I said, at that time, I didn't catch them in the loop of like, oh, well, you lied to me, so you're going to let me go or you're going to have problems. But it was like, they were like, we're going to call CPS. I'm like, oh, you go ahead and you call CPS and you tell them, forget about your abuse cases, forget about all this other stuff. This woman who has no red flags whatsoever, no history of abuse, no like drug addiction, none of that. You're going to go investigate her for wanting to leave the hospital early.
Right, she wants to go home.
Are you out of your fucking mind? Like there are actually kids out there who are being abused and tortured, and like you're worried about what? What the? Oh yeah, a mother wants to take her perfectly healthy son and her perfectly healthy self and go home. So we're gonna call CPS on you. That is just blatant weaponization of CPS. First of all, second of all, it is again, for a lot of people, that would be an extremely traumatic thing to go through the physical process of birthing a whole human being that you've been growing for 9 months. And then the first thing that happens is they're saying, well, if you don't do what we say, we're going to call Child Protective Services on you.
And take your kid from me. Like, what?
Right after that dump of all the hormones and all the other stuff, you're in a spike, you're as sensitive and as vulnerable in one of the most vulnerable places you're ever going to be in your entire life. And they're telling you, oh, they're threatening you and they're doing all this kind of stuff to make you compliant because they want to charge your insurance. That's the bottom line of it. They want to charge your insurance for keeping you there for 24 hours. Yeah. And they're willing to weaponize CPS in order to get that out of you, because most people will say, oh God, no, please don't do it. Please don't do it. You know what I mean?
We'll stay.
We'll stay.
Well, let me.
It leads into what we were talking about before with Stephen. That's like the trauma that happens post-birth that is inflicted on these mothers totally unnecessarily, totally without justification, and they are not held liable when that causes long-term problems.
That's right. Well, let Stephen. If I'll give you, we're probably going to go ahead and get off here. I want to give you.
Yeah.
You had a couple points. You made one about the loved one being prescribed antidepressants to get screened for bipolar. Yes. Was there another one?
Family history of bipolar. That, and also there is a new medication specifically for postpartum called Zurzuvae. It's one of my proudest advocacy moments was testifying in front of the FDA for the approval of the original drug, which was brexanolone. But it's, Zurzuvae, Zurzuvae. And people should be asking their doctors about this because antidepressants are the most prescribed medicine in the world and the least effective. Like, there you go. This medication is way more effective. And it's, unfortunately, you have big pharma kind of. I was shocked while testifying that, like, I wasn't expecting people to be saying, in much bigger numbers, like, this is why you shouldn't approve this drug. Like, we're using drugs that were prescribed in 1987. Prozac passed the FDA like 40 years ago. Like, we can't come up with something better. And, the Prozac and like those are medicines you take every day for the rest of your life. A lot of the times, like this medicine you take if you have an episode, like if you get strep throat, it's like take this it's a 2 week script,
As needed.
and then you're stable and balanced, and you're good. And if you have an episode that flares up, you just get another prescription. So it's a lot less to mentally wrap your head around. It's like, okay, and a lot of people have, prescriptions are expensive, and it's hard to take medicine forever. And so it's just something that I think people should be asking their doctors about. I'm not a doctor, but I think it's an option that you should be bringing up to your doctors. And I talked about the screening, and there was one other point, but it's I have so much anxiety. This phone's going to cut out again. Um, yeah, but no, there's a lot for everyone to digest. But I'm just happy that the discussion's happening, and I'm really praying that we see significant gains in this area, and fast. Um, and so I'm gonna keep on talking until people stop listening.
Well, we will reach back to you probably for sure. Well, definitely for sure as this Clancy verdict comes down, and then probably in the next week or so. But it's been an honor to interview you. We talked probably this long the first time we talked on the phone, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Man,
Yeah.
I thank God that for people like you who have gone through the fire and didn't choose to just lay down and give up or just go back to their normal life. I thank God for people who are willing to go through the fire and say, you know what, I'm not going to let other people go through the same fire that I went through. I'm going to try to make an impact. I don't care how big this world is. I don't care how many people are going. I'm going to try to impact and make a positive change in this world. And so that's what it takes. Just somebody who's like saying, hey, I don't want anybody else's mother, wife, girlfriend, whoever to go through this. And so I thank God for the fight that God gave you, man.
Thank you.
I'm sorry that you lost your wife, but I am thankful that he brought you into this fight. It's an honor to see somebody fight like that. So
Thank you, and thank you, Kim, for sharing some of your story.
Yeah, of course. Love to have you on Warpaint sometime. We'll be in touch about that.
I'll do it. All right.
Awesome.
well,
Take care. Thank you so much. I
Yes, sir,
appreciate
Steve.
you.
God bless you. I'll talk to you soon, brother.
God
God bless. All right.
Well, that was interesting, and I feel a little more educated. I definitely was not something that I would have thought to. My son is actually going to have a baby in a few months, and I'm going to have to.
Oh, so exciting.
He's not having it, his girlfriend's having it, but
Well, obviously.
but yeah, but I want to encourage him to kind of listen to this and look, and see. I think we have to be. You got to be aware of what's going on in your loved one's life, and like, if are they changing? Is there something we need to look at, and
Right.
how? And I think us as men, it's kind of like it's easy for us to just kind of check out, or go work out, or go play video games or whatever, and just kind of be like, oh, she's been fine the whole time I've known her. She'll be fine tomorrow and today
What's
or
about
whatever.
honestly the most important thing that you could do for your loved one is build a support network. I would say make sure that she's got a good friend to talk to. Maybe she close to her mom, close to her grandma, close to her best friend, whoever it is. Make sure that you have this network of people. I participated in something like this a few times. Like when people typically do this when someone's sick, but like when somebody has a baby, organize your group of friends together if you have them, and organize a meal train. If you're too far away to do that, maybe all chip in for DoorDash. Get home, ready to eat meals over there. Have people calling to check in. Even if it's just invite her out. This is one of the
Right.
big things. Even if she says no,
Right.
just being invited, just knowing that you're still somebody that they consider. These are little things that contribute to the mental health of mothers, because a lot of the problems come from the feeling of isolation, because they feel like you don't know how to relate to your friends anymore, and they don't know how to relate to you anymore, especially if they don't have kids yet. So just little things, the little random check-ins, or
It's time to act like a village again, right? It's time to
exactly,
act like a
it's time
community
to
again.
coordinate like a village. The more of a village she has, the more people are keeping an eye on things, and the more people, you're all talking, and if something's going wrong, all of you guys can have an opportunity to go step in and help before it gets to be too much.
I think about the Patrick they're giving. I guess his name's Patrick Clancy. They're giving him a hard time about leaving, and it is. If you just look at it at face value, look, she's talking about killing herself and killing the kids, and you leave to go to the store, and then she does it, and it's like, how do you justify? It's hard to
No.
justify
So
that.
I need to watch. I'm doing a series where I'm gonna watch the entirety of the case,
But
but
I mean,
from the sound of it, like that's she premeditated getting him out of the house.
right.
She looked up how long it would take to go to certain locations.
But on
She,
his end of it, he has to say, okay, she is a danger. Like if you say if me and you are married and you say I'm going to kill the baby, I've got to take that into consideration. Like I have to know, like I'm taking the kids with. If I'm not leaving you alone with my kids if you just threaten to kill them. Like just period. I don't care who you
right.
are.
I
If
don't.
you're my,
I need to
you know what
know
I mean.
more about the case to
But I'm
understand
just saying,
whether or not that's exactly how it happened. Because it
in the
seems,
same vein
yeah,
of the living as a village, like, hey mom, do you mind coming over so I can run to the store and get some things so Kim's not alone with the kids because you know the situation we're dealing with, whatever. Like you got to utilize your network, and maybe it would have happened anyway. Maybe she was premeditated trying to do that anyways. I'm just saying, like at face value, if you just look at from my understanding, what I read and my understanding of the case, I would be terrified to leave, to leave you alone with yourself if you're suicidal, or to leave you alone with my children if you threaten to kill them. I couldn't, because there's like he said, she was educated, she was beautiful, perfect teeth, pretty hair. Like she doesn't. The likelihood of these things happening is low,
yeah.
but it's not zero. It's not zero. They didn't say it's a low likelihood because you're not in the poverty line, you're not of these other things. It's not impossible. And I like to look at statistics, and it's like, okay, it's not likely, but it is possible. And so it's something I think as men, and I'm thinking about as we're talking about like inviting her out. Well, guys, if you're inviting your buddy over and he has a wife who has a new baby or whatever, and say, hey, why don't
Their
you and
lives
the
together. Yeah.
missus, yeah, why don't y'all come over and hang out? We'll fix dinner. You guys can just relax. The ladies can talk. We can hang out and have a beer in the garage or whatever we want to do. You know what I mean? But
Yep.
as
Well,
a
that's
group,
what
as a
when he was
family,
talking about like joining like causes that um are important to you. You'll meet a lot of like-minded people, whether that's in your church, whether that's a charity, whether that's a fitness group, whether that's community organizations of any kind. You know, where you have strong inclinations towards helping or participating, you're going to find more like-minded people, and you're going to be able to build your community.
right?
Um, and
For
that
sure.
is a huge part of it.
Well, I thank you so much for coming on, Kim, and your perspective. I was gonna do the interview with just me and him, and I was like, man, I don't want to miss something because I'm a man's man.
I was a fly on the wall for a lot of it. He has a lot of like, his story is really,
Right, yeah, for real.
um, it's relatable and it's heartbreaking because you just, for anybody who has like dealt with the medical field, like, in any capacity, you kind of know the story as you're being told it. You know what I mean? Like you
No,
recognize,
for sure.
okay, so this happened, and then that, you know what I'm talking about, and like,
No, for sure.
um, it's important for people to understand that going in, and that's why like research on your own situation, but whether it's pregnancy or whatever, before visiting a medical professional is always so important because you want to have that foundation to be able to ask the right questions, to be able to speak up for yourself when something doesn't feel right, and say either like, no, this is what we're doing instead, or find a new professional. I say that to women all the time. Even if you're 6 months in, if your doctor gives you a red flag, you find another doctor, because when you're in that delivery room, you don't want to have to deal with anything like that. And even if it's stressful at the time, it's going to be a lot less stressful finding a new physician than it will be when you're in that delivery room and you wish you were dealing with somebody else.
No, for sure. Well, I want to say this has been Liberty's Cage with Kim Coulter. You can find her show on warboys.tv, right? It's called Warpaint.
It is.
But tomorrow night I had the pleasure and the honor of interviewing Darren Hoover, who is father to Darren Taylor Hoover, who is one of the 13 fallen from Abbey Gate, from the horrific Afghan withdrawal under Joe Biden. It's a sad interview, but man, people, I've had the pleasure to meet like Helen Comparator, the lady whose husband, Corey Comparator, who was shot at the Butler assassination attempt on President Trump, to Darren Hoover,
Wow.
one of the Abbey Gate fallen, and people. We feel like we're under a friendly administration, but people want answers. The J6 community wants answers. Like we want compensation. We want answers of how it happened, who was responsible. Like there's across the board, I've really found that people want answers and people want to help. I'm thankful for Stephen coming
Yeah.
on tonight. But if you guys want to tune in and hear a good interview about a father talking about his son who passed at Abbey Gate under the Biden administration, tune in tomorrow night at 7 p.m. on warboys.tv. You'll find it on Facebook and YouTube. If you're on here, please go on and subscribe to my YouTube channel. It is at Liberty's Cage. I have Cage B on there on the on the text. But if you go to at Liberty's Cage on YouTube, that's my channel. There's no B on Cage. So sorry about that.
Don't type the B. He's just retarded.
Yeah, that's for telling you fat fingers. But it's been an honor. Thank you so much, Kim, for coming on, and tell your husband thank you for covering for you while you're on. And I'm sure you got babies that are hungry and need stuff and diaper changes and all kinds of stuff. But thank you so much, and tell him thank you, and thank you. God bless your beautiful family, and look forward to doing this again.
Yeah, same to you.
All right. God bless you.